You're listening to the Aviation Show,
brought to you by Debela Training.
For more information, contact us on www.debela.co.za now.
And good afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Welcome to the Aviation Show. We're coming to you live from 27 boxes in Melville. I've got the absolute honour of having, you must help me, it's Ian Melamed, is that? Melamed. Okay, welcome to the show, Ian.
Good afternoon to you. It's wonderful being here. I love the environment. It's a super environment.
It's funky, isn't it?
It is. I've never ever sat in a studio which is actually a container.
Yes, but with that container with the aircon.
So it's like being in a cluster of spazes.
It's brilliant. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, we've been chatting so much already, and you're such an inspiration. You started many years ago flying what? How did you get into aviation?
I started in the traditional system in the good old Cherokee 140. I started flying in, yes, I'm going to date myself, back in 67, 68, and I finished my commercial license on the 9th of October 1969.
Wow.
And then I was fortunate enough to fly for Mission Medicare, and I'm sure all those pilots out there who know what I'm talking about, you fly for hours, not for money.
Exactly, not for money, never.
And then I did some flying for the Zambian Tourist Bureau, and most of my flying was in Zambia. And then literally before I got married in 76, yes, I've been married for 41 years and to the same wife.
Wow, that's an achievement on its own, eh? You know what the secret is to a happy marriage?
Yes, say yes.
Yeah, it's 2 words, in fact. Yes, dear. And you'll be happy forever. Happy wife,
Exactly.
happy life.
Yeah. On the training, what's it you say? If your wife is cross with you, the first thing you say is, I'm sorry.
Exactly, yes.
Your second word is, I'll make sure I don't do it again. And the third thing is, you know I love you dearly. Right? Now, you don't have to know what made her upset in the first place, as long as you get those 3 out. I should be running a pre-marriage class to help the
Yes,
students
we'll bring you in here for some marriage counselling when we
could do
finish.
that too.
So you're now with Drone University, but we're talking about your previous life, what you've done before. So let's continue with that discussion.
Well, then one of my last flights was actually just before I got married, where I was able to fly my wife around the Victoria Falls. We went through the Eastern Cataract. We saw the beautiful spray. The sight was absolutely phenomenal. And then I looked at my wife, and she was going greener and greener and greener. Do not take your wife on a flight
At
just
midday.
after you'd had lunch.
Yes.
Not a good idea.
Especially up there.
Sorry.
It's like 38 degrees and you want to take her flying. Shame, man.
Yeah, well, it wasn't too bad because you've got some ventilation in, but it was a smaller aircraft. I will say that I took my youngest son in Nelspruit for a flight as well, not that long ago, and unfortunately I forgot about don't fly non-flying people just after they've eaten.
Yes.
It doesn't work well.
Well, just don't fly it when it's turbulent because they're just not used to it. I remember my introduction to aviation was actually at the Vic Falls. I was 15 years old, and my dad said to me, "Let's go up in a light aircraft." And he had actually had a stomach bug. He had something the day before that didn't agree with him, and we were flying over the Vic Falls, and he was still, in those days you had the camera with the spool in it, and he was changing the spool, putting the new spool in, and we were doing turns over the falls, and he was also getting greener and greener and greener. And he hates flying. He just absolutely doesn't like it at all. But like yourself, he's Zambian. Comes from Rufalaria, so it must be a Zambian thing.
Yes, a Zambian thing of flying. Yes, but look, I lived for most of my young life on the Copper Belt in Zambia. I went to school in Chingola, and without a shadow of a doubt, I would say that my Zambian upbringing was a wonderful, wonderful time of my life.
Yeah, I've heard from my dad as well. He said it was fantastic. So,
people were just people.
Mm.
And you didn't have what I call the South African aggression.
Yeah, there's quite a click. We're coming from there to South Africa as well. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to be. It's like moving from here to Cape Town is also a click.
Yes, very much.
Because you've got
so.
to check the mountain.
But I left Zambia, and then I went on to Zimbabwe for a short few years, and then I went to England to study. Flying, as most pilots know, if you want a family, you want to grow up, is not a good career. It's a
Stable.
nice hobby, but it's not a good career unless you're good enough to go into one of the airlines. And
But even then, you know,
unfortunately,
once you get into Emirates or something like it, you spend a lot of time away from home. It's east-west flying. It's pretty tough. You get paid well, but it's hard life, eh?
Well, from today, my question is, are people flying pilots or software engineers?
Exactly. They just push buttons, eh?
As I mentioned to you a bit earlier, we were discussing Ryanair and that experience that they had where they were trying to dispense with the pilots in the cockpit, saying, from Ireland, you take off automatically, you fly through to England, autopilot all the way, you land automatically on autopilot in England. Is it that strange saying, the safest cockpit is a pilot and a dog? Is that? I'm sure you know that one where the dog is there to
fly
bite the pilot if he touches any of the controls.
And the pilot's there to feed the dog.
Exactly. They have a purpose.
We're going to get crucified. So hence the drone university, hey? So tell us, what do you think is the future of drones? Where do you think it's going to end up in, let's say, 10 to 15 years from now?
One of the things that we need to understand, and that is the fundamental fact that we have one airspace. We may be trying to believe that drones belong in one airspace and manned aircraft belong in another airspace, but airspace is airspace. And ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, have made it very clear that they expected, first of all, by 2030, now 2028, to find a combination of airspace between manned and unmanned. The only reason we have a problem today is air traffic control systems are not designed, and drones don't have on board the capabilities that they need to be able to be seen by air traffic control. But once we've got normal transponders on drones, we have anti-collision systems on drones, then we are ready to go forward and merge manned and unmanned. And that technology, air traffic control technology, to accommodate drones and manned aircraft is very much on the progress path right now.
So how would that work now? If you're in a radar control environment where air traffic control is speaking to you as a piloted aircraft, and now along comes a drone, is he also going to have two-way communication with the drone pilot? Or
commercial drones today are required to have a restricted radio license, and they're required to make their regular broadcasts.
Okay.
In order to ensure that manned traffic within the area are aware where drones are flying. The same way as manned aircraft are required to make their calls to ensure that unmanned traffic know and other manned traffic know they're there. So we already have a system where commercial pilots, commercial manned pilots, commercial drone pilots, all have the requirement to have a license, a radio license, so that they have the proper speak on air to get that accommodation and get that communication going within airspace to make it safer. I know one of the helicopter pilots, don't kill me, one of my biggest fears in life is to see a helicopter that has maintained silence shooting across to the field with no announcement, nothing. I worry about our crop spraying pilots who come narrowly over the fields without making any call signs, and suddenly they appear.
Yes, exactly.
And, you know, guys, drones are taking to the air, and manned pilots need to know that they're there. And if you're going to fly below 400 feet as a manned pilot, from crop spraying or from helicopters, you need to be aware there's a drone that can meet you on the way.
And if you had to have a collision with one of those drones, what type of damage do you think it would do?
The problem is not the drone itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it carries. Drones carry batteries, and it's the explosion of the battery that is the real fear that I have should a manned and an unmanned aircraft meet each other.
It's actually for noise abatement then. Do you know the joke where the airlines are sitting 1,000 feet apart, and in the middle of the night the one says to the other one, "Can you climb 1,000 feet?" And he's like, "What for? What's the purpose? Why are we climbing 1,000 feet?" He says, "For noise abatement." So he says, "Noise abatement at like 40,000 feet." And the air traffic controller comes back and says, "Yes. Have you heard the noise it makes when two 747s hit each other?"
Very good one to remember. But the batteries, Lipo batteries, which are the batteries in the drones, I don't know if enough training takes place with students who are learning to fly drones on Lipo batteries.
Because you can't put them out, eh?
Once they go on fire, that's it. And for those of you who want to get an idea on Lipo batteries, go along and look at these guys who smoke electric cigarettes.
Jeez, yeah, that's quite scary.
All right? When, if you do not allow a Lipo battery to cool before you charge it, you already have a hot battery that's getting a hot charge. You will get a fire.
And then you can't put it out.
You can't.
Yeah.
And we've seen pictures already on the internet where guys have had their faces burnt through smoking these e-cigarettes because they did not look after the battery correctly. And if you take that to a drone, you've got the same.
But that also happens on, what is it, the Galaxy 7 or something phone?
They've withdrawn them.
Those were also catching a light, like in the middle of the...
Correct, and that was because of heat.
Okay, but the same also from the battery.
Yeah, and also the seals, because the problem is Lipo batteries are light sealed. And if you look at the seals of a Lipo battery, you will actually see that when it weakens, you got a problem.
Okay. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be straight back after this with Ian.
Debela Training and Management provides South African civil aviation approved training to aircraft maintenance engineers. From engine to airframe, Debela offers international quality courses on a wide range of aircraft. Many of our clients are from Africa and the Far East, enjoying Debela's tranquil on-site accommodation minutes away from the airport, and also provide courses in your country depending on your training needs. Debela's pioneering range of practical hands-on training videos augment the Debela theoretical modules, modernizing the aviation training industry. Visit www.debela.co.za now. Debela, you name it, we train it.
And welcome back to the Aviation Show. We're coming to you live from 27 Boxes in Melville. We've got Ian from Drone University, and we're busy talking about batteries catching a light. So what other kind of dangers do you see integrating these two manned and unmanned aircraft?
Expertise of the drone pilots. Drone pilots, by the very nature of it, require an understanding of the manned environment. One of the things that when the syllabus was originally put out on, when you realize regulations were passed on the 1st of July 2015, and we can't imagine it was 2 years ago since South Africa started having its own regulations. But if you look at these regulations, right, and you look at the syllabus for training for a commercial pilot, for a remote pilot license, the training, on the face of it, as a student, you would say, what do I need all that training for? I'm just going to fly this little thing up and down. I'm just using it to take photographs. I'm only using it for surveillance. I'm using it in mining. But why do I need all this training? Why do I need to do meteorology? Why do I need to do navigation? Why do I need these subjects?
So is it the same as a commercial pilot's license, or not quite?
What it is essentially the PPL subjects,
Okay.
cut down to a reasonable level.
Mm-hmm.
To me, one of my favorite subjects is human factors.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I believe that's a subject you teach.
I love it.
Now, I often, when on the courses that I run, I often do the human factors, because any pilot, whether you are flying a midget
Yes.
or flying a great big Boeing, any pilot needs to be mentally right to fly.
Mm-hmm.
And the stress factor is so vital in doing anything. It's not just flying, but what it is the understanding. And this is where, to me, the subject of human factor is so important, because it's not knowing about stress
It's how to handle it when it comes up.
and recognizing it in yourself.
Yes, yes, yes.
This type, maybe because I in my life, as or part of my life, I spent a number of years running a drug rehabilitation and alcoholic clinic.
Okay.
And during the time, you learn a lot about humans and how human beings react. And during this time, I realized that one of the biggest issues that we have as humans is we recognize issues in others, but we really struggle to recognize the issues in ourselves.
Yourself.
And fortunately, aviation set up that great monogram called "I'm Safe."
Mm-hmm.
And I try and train students. Please, before you fly, go through, are you ill? Have you taken any medicine in the last 24 hours that is likely to cause you drowsiness and you can't perform correctly? Are you under unusual stress? Has there been a death in the family? Has there divorce? Do you have somebody who's really ill? Understand the stressors that can affect you. And yes, you only need 8 hours from the bottle to the throttle, but staying away from alcohol when you are there. Yes, we all know that we can have a few drinks and we think we can drive as well as anything.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
flying requires a greater degree.
It does, it does.
And I always say to the young guys, please remember you're human. Fatigue is an important part. And we have that contentious issue with Professor Timothy Noakes, all about eating.
The
But at
Banting
the
diet.
end is, have you eaten?
That's very
And I'm
important.
not saying a lot, to keep that,
That blood
sugar
sugar
level,
level, yeah.
blood sugar level balance. And we go through every single time I check out a student for their remote pilot license. I go through in the skills test, are you actually compliant with the I'm safe requirement?
Very important. So, what are the prerequisites then if you want to become a drone pilot?
You need to be 18.
And that's it.
Basically it.
Okay, there's no medical that you have to do anything like
You
in the
got to do a class 4 medical.
Okay.
And you need to do, but those are requirements afterwards. But the prerequisite is you need to be 18. And in South Africa, and I noticed when the courses that we run in South Africa compared to the courses in Zambia, we noticed that in our students in South Africa, many of them, in fact, most of them, English is a second language.
Okay.
Whereas in Zambia, all the students from the time they started nursery school have
English
been
is
taught in English.
First language. Yeah.
And the result is that the learning is much, much easier for the Zambian students of the same material as it is for the South African students.
Okay, so now I know for a private pilot's license you need to do English proficiency nowadays. Do you need it for a drone as well?
If you haven't done English for your high school and it wasn't your first language, you need to do English proficiency.
Okay.
But these are all requirements afterwards. Prerequisite is essentially the age of 18.
Okay.
There's no pre-education requirements. There's nothing. Which means that anybody who wants to, who obviously is healthy enough and has the eyesight for it, And that question, do you need perfect eyesight to be a pilot? And the answer is, of course, not.
No, it used to be for the Air Force, they were pretty strict, but I mean, even as a commercial pilot, you don't have to have fantastic eyesight.
You've got a commercial pilot who starts off with 20/20 vision, and as age comes along, the menu gets further and further away from the arm. You know, it's not my eyesight's got a problem, it's my arm's not long enough.
Like the guy that phones in sick, he can't go to work. They say to him, "What's wrong with you?" He says, "I've got a problem with my eyes." And they say, "What's wrong with your eyes?" He says, "I don't see myself at work."
Yeah, these are the sort of problems they have. But look, I was privileged enough to be South Africa's first instructor for drone pilots, for commercial drone pilots, and I was also South Africa's first examiner, designated examiner. Now, over the last 2 years, I think I've also gone through an enormous amount of learning.
Mm-hmm.
As much as instructors teach students, students teach instructors.
Okay.
And I think that has been extraordinarily valuable. Learning from the students, understanding.
That's
Now,
where I get a lot of my learning from as a student. So they think that you're there to teach them, but you learn from them quite a bit as well.
one of the things that I think we need to teach the new drone operators. In my former environment, which for those who go onto the web and look at Shire drone, they will see on there the drones that we flew in Shishlui and Valosi Game Reserve in the anti-rhino poaching.
And
these were fairly large
proper drones.
Proper size.
And you've got a story for that for us after the break about that as well, eh? Flying in Shishlui, are you going to tell us about the priest?
Well, I'll tell you about the priest later, but this is actually in Shishlui. One of the things that I would like to mention, that we went in there and we brought in from 2013 to 2015, over that period, we brought the rhino poaching down by 69%.
69%. And how do you do that? I mean...
And that is by using the right drones in the game reserve for the right purpose.
So just touch on that quickly, just for a minute. How does that all work?
Well, first of all, we were circulating the actual environment, the whole game reserve. We were travelling out beyond visual line of sight, something like 16 kilometres away in the game reserve itself.
So, what are you looking at? Are you looking through goggles, or are you looking at a little...
We did something we knew we didn't know.
Okay.
And not being experts at game, what we did was we hired retired game rangers.
All right.
You cannot, doesn't matter how brilliant you think you are, you cannot be a substitute for the knowledge and experience of a well-trained game ranger.
Okay.
And what these game rangers would be able to do is they would see through the screen and they would recognize what was happening.
Wow.
The other part about it was that the aircraft, looking like aircraft, and it did look exactly like a normal aircraft, scared the living daylights away from the poachers.
Okay. But how big are these things? I mean, what's the kind of wingspan that you got?
The wingspan's about 3.5 meters.
Wow, so it's a proper aircraft.
It takes off like an aircraft, it sounds like an aircraft, and it looks like an aircraft. And it
operates like an aircraft as well, eh?
Yeah, it looks exactly like an aircraft.
Okay, so you're going to tell us a quick story when we get back from the break. We'll be back straight after this.
Get all of today's aviation news on one site. Visit pilotspost.com. Updated twice a week, Pilots Post is a convenient way for aviation professionals and enthusiasts to remain updated with the latest aviation technologies, products, events, and news. Aviation safety, technical information, events reports, aircraft reviews, and aviation personalities are some of our most popular articles. Now in its 5th year with more than 100,000 hits per month and almost 15,000 dedicated readers, Pilots Post is available free on the web. No registration is required. To read Pilots Post, simply go to www.pilotspost.com.
Which the priest.
Real aviation stories with Debela.
Submit your real life story to www.debela.co.za.
And you could be featured on the Aviation Show live on brandlive.co.za or in our upcoming book.
Okay, so we were talking about stories, and you said something about a priest. So I can't wait for this story.
In Zambia, we had a flying priest, and unfortunately, his knowledge of English was nowhere near the level of competency. He was from Italy, and flying once into Ndola, this was basically what I heard on the radio. Ndola Control Romeo Hotel Juliet, I'm a coming.
I'm a coming.
And the controller said, negative, Romeo Hotel Juliet, orbit left base. Short time went past. And Dollar Control Romeo Hotel Juliet, I'm a coming. The traffic controller responded, negative, Romeo Hotel Juliet, orbit left space. After a very short time, you heard the Ndola controller said, BOAC VC10, kindly hold your position and remain orbiting. We have an aircraft coming in before you.
And he just landed.
We were very fortunate that, and I say fortunate, this particular priest did not understand weight and balance. The result was he was trying to take off from Mofalera, and we say he put the donkey and everything else in the aircraft. Sure. It was a little 180, and he tried his damnedest to get off, and just at the fence, the aircraft came down. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough money to fix it, and that aircraft is rest in peace.
Well, Ian, before we go, we've run out of time. Just quickly tell the listeners, where can they get hold of you, Drone University?
The easiest part of all is it's for all drone training, especially you commercial guys, it's drones.university. That is it. There's no .coms, there's no .anything. It's just drones.university.
And where are you based?
And we're based here in Sandton. In Wendywood is the theory training, and the actual practical training grounds is out in Mulder's Drift.
Okay, my area.
In your area. And it's a beautiful field that we've got out there with proper runways, the lot.
Fantastic. Well, it's been brilliant having you on the show. So quick, we're out of time, but we'll have to get you back.
All the best, and welcome to come back at any time you like.
From us too, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go.
You have been listening to the Aviation Show on brandlive.co.za, proudly brought to you by Debela Training.
Visit www.debela.co.za now.
brandlive.co.za. You're listening to brandlive.co.za.